Jack has faced many hardships in his battle against the evil demon Aku. He's fought hordes of robots, bounty hunters, monsters, and even his very own inner demons. But now he faces an even greater battle: the opposite sex. First off, let me just say that the way this week's episode ended was brilliantly hilarious. Not only does it not end with the classic "Watch out, Samurai Jack" theme, but it ends with Dean Martin's "Everybody needs somebody to love." And that's because Jack and Ashi start to love one another. This entire episode is all about their sexual frustration and building up to that moment when they finally declare their love for each other, not with words, but embracing each other after slaughtering a giant monster. This episode was great. So the setup of this episode is really simple. The first half of the episode is essentially just Jack and Ashi traveling through the desert, and in the second half they take refuge from this massive sandstorm by going into this massive crashed spaceship which has this weird, creepy, assimilating hive mind alien which hunts them down all over this big spaceship, leading of course to a lot of action and a lot of ridiculous moments between the characters, like Ashi completely losing all of her clothes and fighting naked, not to mention the hilarity of watching him desperately try to use this weapon to kill this monster, and he has no idea how to make it work. This episode is all about Jack and Ashi accepting their feelings for one another, and it takes a lot of crazy action in order for it to happen, but it just feels right the entire time. That's what I really loved about it. In fact, I loved the way the episode actually opened up with a lot of foreshadowing by showing us this giant, square, monolithic ship, something straight out of 2001: A Space Odyssey, as it suddenly crashes into Earth. And this giant spaceship is actually some sort of giant space prison housing all sorts of weird, freaky-deaky aliens, including the one I mentioned before, which is basically like a group of giant blue leeches which can actually come together and form like one giant monster. And before we get to that, the best parts of this episode for me are just the smaller moments between Jack and Ashi as they leave this desert town, go into the desert on this journey, and frankly just have a lot of pleasant time with one another. Of course, the biggest thing about this episode is that there's just this massive sexual frustration between the two characters where they're not quite sure how to address each other. There's a scene earlier on in the episode when they're riding on top of this giant dinosaur camel creature, which also acts as a transport for people, and they're in this really crowded area, and they suddenly get ambushed by all of these green anthropomorphic tiger men, which have the theme of having alphabet letters on their shirt, which spell out a lot of funny things, like death to the samurai, kill Jack. There's even a few moments in this episode, I bet, where you freeze frame, you're gonna see some really funny images. And there's even a great shot where Jack actually attacks one of them, swinging his sword into a group of them, and it all spells out "whoa" on their shirts. It's just a really great visual cue, and something that the creator of the series is always known for doing, creating a lot of really interesting, iconic imagery. But while all of this is going on, there's like barely any room to fight, and Jack and Ashi are constantly bumping into each other, grabbing each other, and basically just blushing their asses off. And it's freaking adorable and funny to watch, especially Jack himself, who has no idea how to handle any of this shit. And that's something that I think is a really interesting thing to address in the series. The series has never really had like any big romantic moments. There's a lot of relationships that Jack has formed with people, but now he genuinely cares about this woman, he wants to start a relationship with her, and he has no idea how to handle it. So a lot of the humor just comes from him just being incredibly nervous throughout the entire episode. And there's also this great moment where they're traveling through the desert, which is mostly just an excuse for a lot of great visuals, like when they go to this oasis, and Jack decides to make them these awesome freaking paper hats, kind of like the one that he used to wear back in the day. But things start to change immediately once we go to this spaceship, where they go inside, they discover how huge it is, and that something has escaped, and it's up to them to actually take down this monster, which can actually separate its body and suck on your blood and completely weaken you and poison you at the same time. And I really love how as the episode goes on, you get to see that Jack is becoming a little more comfortable being around Ashi. Like, in the beginning parts of the episode, he could barely compose himself just when he was, like, holding her hand or barely even touching her. And by the time they get to the friggin' spaceship, he's able to suck on her leg and suck all this poison out without even getting, like, red in the face. Maybe it's because there's something serious going on here, but I think it's a nice visual metaphor to show that he's getting a lot closer to Ashi. And the rest of the episode, I think, just speaks for itself. It's just watching Jack and Ashi run away from this monster, fight against it in a lot of great sequences, which makes great use of color. The fact that these leeches are this like dark blue, whenever they get cut, they separate and you see all of this like neon green Predator-style blood squirt all over the place. And then there's the misunderstandings between the two characters, like Ashi getting completely naked and not even being worried about the fact, Jack getting incredibly nervous and covering her up with his robe or his gi, whatever the hell he wants to call it. And even the moment when he has to use this very specific weapon which can take out this very specific monster, and there's a moment where he has to learn how to activate it and he ends up mishearing it, he has no idea how to make it happen, and a lot of the humor comes from them constantly tossing this device back and forth as they decide how are they going to kill this monster. Right as they're being consumed by this creature, they get covered in all of it, they activate the device, it electrocutes and destroys them, they're covered in all of this monster blood, and the first thing they do when they see each other is they just start making out. It's pretty obvious that Genndy Tartakovsky, the creator of the series, is a fan of the Rat Pack. How else do you freaking explain the characters of Scaramouche the Merciless, and of course bringing out a classic Dean Martin song in this episode, which also plays over the entire credits as Jack and Ashi just continue to suck face. It was a freaking hilarious ending to a great episode of Samurai Jack, which made me realize this isn't just a retread of the previous seasons. This isn't just Jack going on more adventures. This is Jack growing as a character, starting relationships with people, and finally coming to terms with the fact that if he wants to end all of this, he's gonna have to take down Aku, and he's not going to have to do it alone. It is a great growing moment for the character, and this episode was the perfect example of that. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Samurai Jack? The visuals of the episode speak for themselves. I especially love how different they are. There's a yin-yang to this episode, with the first half being bright and cheery, and the second half being dark and dreary. But it all leads to something which is incredibly great, which is Jack and Ashi finally admitting that they love each other. So, the theories of them actually falling in love can now be officially confirmed. It's going down, whether you like it or not. Originally, I sort of saw the relationship as a father-daughter kind of thing, but it became a little more obvious in the last episode when Jack got his sword back and he got that big shave. She was really impressed with actually seeing him that way, and you could see from that moment that there was going to start to be a little bit of awkwardness between those characters, and it was really fun to see in this episode, and just that moment where they're just like, fuck it, they just start making out. Like, that was so damn funny. I really loved that moment. And it's the music, I really think, that made it. It added a little bit of class to that scene, as well as making it incredibly humorous. Just one of my favorite moments from the entire series, personally. And I honestly can't wait to see how this whole series is going to end, if Jack and Ashi are still going to be able to have their relationship. I still have the theory that Ashi is probably going to be killed in some sort of final battle. If that does happen, the series is definitely going to go into some even more darker places, although one of the favorite theories that I heard is that Jack is actually going to return to the past with Ashi and start a family with her in a world which has not been ruled by Aku, and one where they can actually have a nice, peaceful life, which would of course be a really poetic end to the series, but we're going to have to see how the creator of the series is going to shock us. We still have a couple more episodes to go, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of revelations. The preview for the next episode showed us practically nothing, so I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that one. But this one right here was made for the Jack and Ashi shippers. It pays off entirely at the end, and it'll just put a big smile on your face. It definitely did for me. I really found myself rearing back and laughing when I saw that final scene. It was classic. So, what more can I say? Another perfect episode of Samurai Jack from Season 5. I'm giving this one a 5 out of 5. Check it out, guys. If any of you did watch the episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Aside from the ending scene, did you guys have any other favorite moments or visuals from this episode that you enjoyed? Like the Tigermen with the alphabet shirts, or maybe even the weird freaky-deaky leech alien? And how did you react to that final scene when Jack and Ashi finally embraced each other, set to Dean Martin? Make sure to tell me in the comments section below what you hope to see from the rest of Samurai Jack Season 5. Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Samurai Jack related. Make sure to leave a comment telling me what you thought about the episode. I'd love to talk with you guys about it. And if you have any questions for me personally, I'd love to answer them. And if you liked this review, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay damn, baby.